In adherence, when the endothelial lining is disrupted to expose the underlying matrix, platelets attached to the collagen via surface integrin receptors G1A, glycoprotein 1A, 2A, and 6. It is favored in low shear conditions such as venous circulation, but in high shear flow, 1 milligram factor and from endothelial cells and from increasing clots binds to integrin 1B, 9, and other major adherence anchors. In capillary blood flow, the platelets are pushed to the periphery and by the red blood cells. So in anemia, this lessens the platelet contact and reduces platelet function. Platelet activation is mediated by signaling pathways from the platelet surface or outside in signaling. The central target is phospholipid C. In G protein coupled receptors, this is activated by an array of corresponding agonists, including thrombin from the formation of clotting cascade, adenosine triphosphate, thromboxane A2, serotonin, epinephrine, and vasopressin. Activated phospholipase C leads to several structural changes in the platelets via IP3 calcium is released from the storage tubules. In aggregation, activated platelets express G2, glycoprotein 2B, 3A, and 3A receptors. These bind fibrinogen and 1 factor. The platelet plug forms a stable block that seals the injury. In stabilization, this is the inside-out signaling of the glycoprotein 2B and 3A mediated by the GAG and protein kinase C. Fibrin binding enmeshes the platelets, leading to the formation of the platelet plug. So in inhibition, the endothelial cells secrete PGI2, which binds to the surface receptor to signal increased count. Cyclic adenosine monophosphate activates a protein kinase A, an inhibitor of the 1 milligram factor adherence, thromboxane A2 activation, and phospholipase C internal signaling. Cyclic AMP is also metabolized by phosphodiesterase. Endothelial cells also secrete nitrous oxide, which at high levels initiates inhibition of the thromboxane A2 receptor. So, this just shows the parts where the anticoagulants and antiplatelet medications bind to the signaling pathway. So, this shows the sites. This figure shows the sites of action for current antiplatelet medications. Currently, there are no drugs available to counteract the first step, which is platelet adherence. But aspirin and trifusel dampens the secretion of thromboxane A2 by inhibiting COX-1, an enzyme that converts AA to thromboxane A2. Another agonist, ADP, has its P2Y12 receptor blocked by clopidogrel and several other drugs. Protease activated receptor 1 or PAR1 for thrombin activation is blocked by Vorapaxar. Formation and stabilization of the platelet plug is blocked by abciximab, eftimbatide, and tirofiban, which act at GP2B and 3A. Finally, the major inhibitory pathway mediated by endothelial PGI2 is upregulated by dipyridamole and cilostazol. So, in secondary hemostasis, clotting factors in the plasma are activated at sites of endothelial injury and assembled in enzymatic complexes to activate thrombin. Thrombin activates other more effective, more efficient enzymes which propagate thrombin burst. Thrombin also converts fibrinogen to fibrin, which correlates with activated platelets to form So, the extrinsic pathway, endothelial disruption exposes tissue factor on the underlying cell membranes. Tissue factor then binds to 7 and 7A, which are cofactors for the activation of factor 7. And a first complex is formed. 7A enzyme, tissue factor, cofactor, cell membrane, phospholipid, and calcium. This extrinsic 10A activates the factor 10 and factor 9. A second complex is also formed. XA enzyme, cofactor 5A, phospholipid, and calcium. Cofactor 5A is derived from the factor 5 from activated platelet alpha granules. Prothrombinase converts prothrombin 2 or 2-thrombin or 2A. This is the extrinsic, this shows the coagulating pathway, showing the extrinsic and the intrinsic pathways. So, in the intrinsic pathway, thrombin has several central functions. So, it activates platelets via surface receptors part 1 and part 4, leaves more 5 to 5A and initiates intrinsic or intravascular coagulation pathway by cleaving factors 9 and 9A. 9A cleaves more, 11 to 11A. 11A cleaves more 9 to 9A, and thrombin also activates 8 to 8A. So, thrombin activates platelets via surface receptors, cleaves, intrinsic 10As or 9A enzyme, 8A cofactor, phospholipid, and calcium. Fibrin polymers are cross-linked by factor 13A to form a stable fibrous clot. Cross-links activate the platelets by their glycoprotein 2B or 3A receptors to enmesh platelets and fibrin in the platelet clot from the clotting factors are produced in the liver except for 8. So the plasma half-life is 1.5 to 3 days. Factor 7 has a half-life of 6 hours, and cofactors 5 and 8 have 8 to 12 hours. So the factors 2, 7, 9, and 10 are all vitamin A dependent. So for the inhibition, the tissue factor pathway inhibitor or TFPI, antithrombin 3 or ATP, protein CA. So the tissue factor pathway inhibitor binds to the 7A protease and its 10A product is produced in the endothelial cells, which is stimulated by heparin. Heparin binds to and raises the inhibitory efficiency of the tissue factor pathway inhibitor. Antithrombin 3 is a serine protease inhibitor or SERPIN and inhibits proteases in all clotting pathways. 7A, 10A, 11A, and 9A, and thrombin. It is also greatly increased when bound to heparin. So for protein CAs, and it's an enzymatic complex with the same four-part structure. Thrombomodulin is secreted by endothelial cell membranes, where thrombin cleaves and activates protein C, and the activated protein C or APC breaks the clotting by cleaving 8A and 5A. So protein C has a half-life of 6 hours, while protein S is the cofactor of 4 protein C. Both are vitamin K dependent. So, for fibrinolysis, fibrin clots must be broken down after they have served their purpose. So plasminogen is activated to plasmin, which breaks down fibrin polymers, and tissue plasminogen activator or TPA is a major activator of plasminogen in the blood. Urokinase is the main plasminogen activator in the tissues. So both of these can be administered as PPA and urokinase and accelerates their clearance from the plasma. So the PA1 comes from the alpha granules and the PA comes from placenta. So yung TAPI are secreted by the endothelial cells and inhibits TPA and plasmin action on fibrin. So alpha-2 antiplasmin naman binds to plasmin and blocks its action, which slows down plasmin metabolism. Yeah. So for the pharmacologic inhibition of fibrinolysis, lysine analogs block the lysine binding sites of plasminogen, stabilizing the clots. And this prevents plasminogen from acting on fibrin. So this includes epsilon aminocaproic acid and tranexamic acid. So for the laboratory evaluation of hemostasis, general approach includes initial screening. The patients, we need to ask for the patient's medical history to identify any hemostatic problems. Also the family history, which is useful in the diagnosis of congenital diseases and understanding inheritance patterns. Also, we should review medications, including anticoagulant and antiplatelet use, and also over-the-counter medications as well as herbal medications. So, in the primary hemostasis evaluation, we all know this platelet count is between 1,500 150,000 to 450,000. Also, peripheral blood smear, platelet function tests such as bleeding time, in vitro PFPs, using the PFA100 device and platelet aggregation. So, the bleeding time, it's not commonly used lately now because it's invasive, labor-intensive, and impractical. It's also difficult to reproduce. So in vitro PFPs, it uses platelet agonists to activate and aggregate. The PFA100 device uses prolonged closure, means platelet dysfunction, but false positives are quite common. So in platelet aggregation, it's a detailed test using multiple agonists. In von Willebrand disease testing, initial tests measure the BWF antigen activity and the factor 7 activity level. So the blood group typing is also necessary to interpret the borderline von Willebrand factor levels. Types of von Willebrand disease, the type 1 is quantitative deficiency. Type 2 is a qualitative defects with subtypes A, B, M, and N. Type 3 is the severe autosomal recessive deficiency, and the fourth one is acquired due to various conditions and medications. In secondary hemostasis evaluation, prothrombin time or PT measures the extrinsic pathway, while the activated partial thromboplastin time measures the intrinsic pathway. In mixing studies, this differentiates between factor deficiencies and inhibitors. So individual factor levels determine specific factor deficiencies. So the purpose of mixing studies is used to investigate elevated PT or activated prothrombin time values to differentiate between factor deficiencies and the presence of inhibitors. The patient's plasma is mixed with normal plasma, and both tests are repeated again on the mixed sample. If there's a correction, then there's factor deficiency. If there's no correction, then the patient must be using inhibitors or anticoagulants, or there's a presence of anticoagulant or inhibitor in the plasma. So in viscoelastic testing, thromboelastography or TEG and rotation thromboelastometry or ROTEM assess the whole blood clotting and fibrinolysis. It also measures the rate, strength, and lysis of clot formation. It's helpful in determining the appropriate therapy, particularly in complex bleeding syndromes. For the diagnosis of thromboembolic disorders, we must consider the risk factors including physical activity, if there's a malignancy or contraceptive use, estrogen therapy, or pregnancy. Congenital risk factors like factor 5 latent protein C and S deficiencies, AP3 deficiency, or prothrombin mutation. There's also acquired risk factors like antiphospholipid antibodies and hyperhomocysteine. So, monitoring anticoagulation therapeutic agents. Warfarin use is monitored by PP and INR, and heparin is monitored by APPT or anti-factor 10A activity. And low molecular weight heparin usually does not require monitoring, but anti-factor 10A assays can be used if available. So, newer anticoagulants. So, the monitoring varies. Specific tests may be required for direct. Yes.
But you said that warfarin goes on therapeutic agents that cannot require monitoring. For example, warfarin, why is monitoring important? If the patient is in warfarin.
Ano ba, para modulate ko yung dose na mabigay sa patient. Kasi, para po ma-modulate ko yung dose na maibigay sa patient. Sorry. Ma-modulate ko yung dose na pwedeng ibigay sa patient. If nag-respond na ba siya sa therapy, kailangan kong ibabaan yung dose. If nag-respond na po siya sa therapy, kailangan na po bang babaan yung dose. Kaya kailangan i-measure lagi yung PP and INR ni patient.
Kasi usually mga cardio, diba? May mga target silang INR.
Yes.
Diba? Yung ba yung minimum mo? May target silang INR. Hindi ka pwede mag-over.
Yung sa therapeutic range.
Yes, for the therapeutic dose because it can lead to, diba? Example, sa mga cardiac na mga pregnant, diba? Yung mga naka-warfarin. Diba? Pwede silang mag-pause kapag sumobra yung dose ng warfarin or yung INR nila is masyadong mataas, pwede magkaroon na
DIC. DIC.
No, not DIC. Sa pregnant, kung na-encounter mo yan, di ba, warfarin, sa mga senior, yung mga naka-warfarin sa cardio, na pregnant, ay hindi okay. Bakit hindi mo monitor? May idea. Kasi nakalagay, monitor ang immunotherapy. Yes, sir, ma'am.
Kasi po, pregnant patients are may
Also,
hypercoagulable state.
hypercoagulable state na nga
So,
po.
we need to monitor warfarin or leading parameters in general. Returning or evaluation of the risk factor in the patient if they are going to
Yung ano,
leading problems with hypertension or at most DIC.
not only DIC or bleeding problem, usually, makaka-encounter kasi kayo niyan, I'm speaking of OB patients ha, yung mga naka-warfarin yun, yung cardiac, yung mga
To minimize the risk of congenital warfarin syndrome.
congenital warfarin syndrome, pwede yung mag-cause na.
Yung characteristic abnormalities dito, like hypoplastic nose.
Ano yung pinaka-ayaw natin? Yung mga naka-warfarin.
Heart.
That's why nakamonitor yung I'm speaking of weekly overnight. Okay, so kung may mga naka-warfarin kayo ni-refer, diba? So you have to know kapag masyado ng mataas ang INR. Hindi lang sinabi ng mga dependent. Eh why, bukod dyan, bukod dun sa mga pregnant, sa regular na naka-warfarin, bakit din mo monitor ang INR? Ilang days pa nasa system ang warfarin? Ilang days? Five days. Kahit mag-stop kayo, 5 days pa rin siyang nasa system. So you have to compare with low molecular weight heparin, di ba usually for up to 24 hours lang siya. Pag nag-stop ko, wala na siya sa system. Okay?
So, this table shows the common antiagonists along with the required laboratory monitoring and possible reversal agents for emergencies. So as you can see here, antiplatelet agents. So aspirin to stop before procedure 7 days. No monitoring is needed. Reversal agents require platelet transfusion. Vitamin K agonists such as warfarin, stop 2 to 5 days before procedure. Monitoring by PT and INR. Reversal agents are PCC, fresh frozen plasma, and vitamin K. So heparins like unfractionated heparin stop before stop 6 hours before the procedure. Monitoring by PPP and reversal agents of protamine. Low molecular weight heparin naman 12 to 24 hours. No monitoring required. Partially reversed by protamine. So the pentasaccharide fondaparinum, you may stop this 3 days before the procedure. No monitoring is required, but factor 10A levels can monitor the level of fondaparinum. No reversal agents available. Direct thrombin inhibitors like abgatroban and bivalirudin, you may stop this 3 hours or 4 to 6 hours but before the procedure. Monitoring by PPT or ACT. No reversal agents available. For the factor 10A inhibitors like dabigatran, stop 2 to 4 days or longer if with renal impairment. No monitoring required. A reversal agent by Lucizumab. So for apixaban, rivaroxaban, edoxaban, stop 2 to 3 days before the procedure. No monitoring required.
Anong edition mo yun? Yun kasi di ba Everrush, yung aspirin, na-compare mo?
Iba.
Ano iba? Ano nakalagay? Yung sa aspirin. Anong guidelines?
What is the half-life of your platelet? What is the half-life of your platelet? Anyone? What's the half-life of your platelet?
7 to 10.
Zero. 7 to 10 days. That's why your drugs should be discontinued at least 7 to 10 days. So, if you'll be taking aspirin, for example, ano bang mode of action ng aspirin? Pag-relaxo. Yung una-una, lagi yung aspirin. does it work? Anyone? How does your aspirin work? Correct. Irreversible. Cyclopentadic. So yung iba dyan, yung TY212, ano yan? Anong gano'n ang meron? Ano yan? Ano example niya? So dapat, alam mo din, kasi report mo yan, di ba? So lagi rin ginagamit yan. Ano yung ano yan? Ano example niya? T2Y12. Clopidogrel. So it should be distributed at least every 14 days.
So what to do if there's prolonged PT or prolonged PTP? So for prolonged PT, we must assess the extrinsic pathway. So maybe there's a vitamin K deficiency which affects the factors 2, 7, 9, and 10. Or if there's liver disease, which impairs synthesis of clotting factors. If there's warfarin therapy, which inhibits vitamin K dependent factors, and factor 7 deficiency, which specifically prolongs PT. So for prolonged PTT naman, we must assess the intrinsic pathway. So if there's hemophilia A or B, which have factor 8 and 9 deficiency, von Willebrand factor disease, which affects factor 8 levels, if the patient is undergoing heparin therapy, which prolongs PTT. If there's lupus anticoagulant inhibitor, factor deficiencies like factor 12, 11, 9, and 8, or corrected missing study, or no correction in the missing study. So, for clotting time, clotting time is the time it takes to form a clot in a tube. It's the assessment of coagulation pathways. Also evaluates the intrinsic and common pathway. So it is used in diagnosis of coagulation disorders. Prolonged CT indicates clotting factor deficiency. Monitoring anticoagulant therapy like heparin. It's also less commonly used in modern clinical practice due to more specific tests. For bleeding time is the time it takes for a small standardized clot to stop bleeding. It's the assessment of primary hemostasis and evaluates platelet function and blood vessel motility. It is also used in the diagnosis of platelet disorders. So prolonged bleeding time indicates platelet dysfunction or vascular abnormalities. It's also used for screening bleeding disorders, but it's invasive and uncomfortable with variable results. So, what's the role of INR in anesthetic management? So, INR is the International Normalized Ratio. It's a standardized measure of blood coagulation, specifically the extrinsic pathway, used to monitor the effectiveness of warfarin therapy. So, you must first begin with preoperative assessment, evaluating the bleeding risk. So, an increased INR indicates that there's a higher bleeding risk, particularly important for patients on anticoagulant therapy. So, it also affects decision making for surgery and helps determine whether if it's safe to proceed with the surgery or if adjustments are needed for the anticoagulant therapy. So, management of anticoagulation, INR is used to monitor and adjust the warfarin dosage to maintain therapeutic levels of 2 to 3. And for the reversal of anticoagulation in elevated INR, vitamin K and FFP or protein complex concentrates may be given to reverse anticoagulation and reduce bleeding risk. So, for the intraoperative considerations, monitoring coagulation status may be continuous or periodic. Monitoring may be necessary during surgery, especially in patients with a history of coagulopathy or those on anticoagulant therapy. So, for blood product administration, decisions regarding the administration of blood products can be guided by INR values to ensure adequate coagulation. For the post-operative management, resuming anticoagulation for post-op INR monitoring helps determine the appropriate time to resume anticoagulant therapy, balancing the risk of thrombosis and bleeding. So, managing complications, elevated INR post-op may require intervention to prevent or manage bleeding complications. So, risks of high INR perioperatively. So, there's increased bleeding or surgical site bleeding, which may be difficult to achieve in most cases. Intraoperative hemorrhage or higher risk of blood loss during the procedure, complicating and prolonging the operative time. So, post-op bleeding, leading to wound hematoma. So, there's increased risk of hematoma at the surgical site, leading to wound complications and delayed healing. There would also be internal bleeding. Risk of bleeding may not be apparent immediately but can lead to serious complications. So, there may be a need for blood transfusions. Increased transfusion requirements in high INR may necessitate the use of blood products such as FFP and PCCs to manage bleeding, increasing transfusion-related complications. So, another risk would be delayed surgery. So, postponement of elective procedures